We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Hey everybody, it's Boysen Hodgson. Welcome back to the Mankind podcast. Today I get to hang out with a dude who I have known since 2008, Kyle Hoffman. A long relationship. That was a long time ago. I was in my 30s back then. So Kyle, say hello.
Hey everyone. Hey brothers and everyone else listening. It's really an honor to be here.
Let me tell you a story about Kyle Hoffman when we first met. So I've been part of a Mankind Project men's group since 2005, 2004, late 2004. And with my buddy Robert Zeller, we started a men's group in West Springfield, Massachusetts. That was an open group. And in 2008, so just a couple of years later after we had gotten that group started, in comes this fresh-faced kid who was, we just figured out, 22 years old to join the group. So in our conversation today, we're going to be talking about evolution over time. We're going to be talking about building a life of personal development. We're going to be talking about risk and self-challenge. We're going to be talking about touch, and we're going to be talking about getting more comfortable with knowing what we want, asking for what we want, creating the kind of connections that we want in the world. Kyle's done a lot of stuff. I'm going to ask him to give you a couple of bullet points on his personal development CV as he's had it over the years. And it's really good to see your face, brother. It's good to see you. So tell the folks out there a few highlights of what you've been up to and how you've gotten to where you're at today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I often like to just slow it down a little bit to really appreciate, to let the amazingness sink in of getting to be here with you and our beautiful brotherhood over time. How much the Mankind Project has really meant to me. I was thinking before we got on today that this really feels like a dream come true for me to be able to be here and connect with so many of you brothers and serve, hopefully be of value today. I'll briefly share that some of my work these days is I do life and intimacy coaching, sometimes hands-on intimacy coaching. I do touch and cuddle therapy, and I lead group workshops about those different topics and communication, consent, platonic touch, sensual or erotic touch. And some of those workshops are for all genders, men, women, and other gender identities. And some of those are only for men or more masculine leaning identities. And I was so excited today, Boysen, because many times throughout our history I've gotten to say thank you so much for truly being, maybe without you, I would not be here, because you did the advertisement on Meetup for the Springfield Uprising open group, and I was fresh out of college, didn't know how to make friends, and I was like, oh, this looks like a cool way to meet some guys. We'll probably we'll probably eat food, maybe some beers. Like, I don't know. I was like, oh, I have no idea how to make friends. I'll show up. I remember when we were sitting in circle, and this was the first time ever I had done anything remotely like this. And after setting a really safe space and ground rules, one of the first questions was, maybe even Robert Zeller offered it, was for a round, was, what do you not want us to know about you? And I was one of the first to go, and my answer was something like, well, I don't know, I'm a pretty open guy. I don't think I really have anything to share, but you can ask anything, whatever. And like, that was my reality. I thought I was a really open guy. And as you courageous and amazing men went around in the circle sharing things that were more vulnerable and courageous and emotional than I had mostly ever experienced before, the men in my life. Even I felt I love my two biological brothers, my dad, amazing men. And in some ways I felt like I was getting to connect with men deeper in that circle who I just met, even more so than my brothers and dad, who I was still very close to. And that a moment totally changed my life, trajectory of my life. I remember my jaw just dropped more and more as the men went around in the circle, and I got inspired over time to do transformational work. And another key moment was at the New Warrior training adventure, and seeing all these men come from different backgrounds and ability to connect and let down guard. And I thought, wow, how amazing would the world be if this was a representation of the world. And I also thought, wow, how cool would it be to be that guy? And there's many guys, but that guy, like the leader up at the front of the room. And that was really the start of the inspiration for me coming into the work I'm doing now and this long journey. So thank you, Boysen, so much. And thank you, Robert Zeller, and all those amazing men in the circle and in MKP that have truly just helped me change and grow and supported me a million times.
Thank you. So as long as we're doing mutual appreciation, so thank you, Kyle, and that's an honor. And the other thing that I will say is I've called out Kyle Hoffman over the years multiple times, and we've talked about it on the podcast before, but the work that we do in circles continues to evolve, and men's work in general continues to evolve. So here's where I give Kyle Hoffman credit. We had no idea what we were doing running this open group. We were doing the thing. We were doing the best we could. And we recreated a lot of things in the Mankind Project that have continued to change, that were insular, that were exclusionary, that were language that we used that put men off, things that we invited that men were confused about. We created a space that was not always welcoming to new men coming into the circle. And what I have given credit to Kyle for over the years is we had a set of ground rules that we completely rewrote as a result of Kyle's influence. We had a preamble kind of thing about who we were as a community that we completely rewrote as a result of Kyle's influence. Being a young man entering into the work and saying, yo, what are you talking about? Like, what are we doing here? Like, why is this like this? Why are we saying this? Why are we making these kinds of rules? So as a result of that, like now in the Mankind Project 2024, those communities that are most successful, those are communities that are most engaged and enlivened and vibrant out there. Those communities that are actually enrolling more men into intensive work like the New Warrior Training Adventure are using ground rules that Kyle Hoffman helped write in 2008, 2009. So, dude, awesome. So your influence has run through, and yeah, you have ended up being that guy in the front of the room for a lot of people. So, and I'm going to be, here's the vulnerable moment, right? The work that Kyle Hoffman does in the world scares the hell out of me. And he has had to face that. Like, I remember a number of years ago, you ended up in one of the Philadelphia papers.
Philadelphia Inquirer, yeah.
In the Philadelphia Inquirer, right? And I just remember the responses that came out of that article when it was talking about, this is shortly after you had completed the Cuddlist, the cuddling certification through Cuddlist, I think. Mm-hmm. And you had started a cuddling group outside Philly. So let's talk about men's terror of platonic touch and what you've witnessed. Tell me some stories about what you've witnessed in working with men specifically around platonic touch and connection.
Yeah, sure. And one, yeah, thank you so much, Boysen, for what you shared. It means more you can know. And I do want to give credit that well, at least at that time, that men's cuddle group, yeah, platonic. It was platonic, clothed, therapeutic men's cuddle group, and really maybe the man who started it was Kevin Eitzenberg, who you might maybe talked with. And yeah, thanks to Kevin, I got into that group. That was another completely life-changing moment for me. And I'll mention if anyone, I think it's a really beautiful article. And if anyone wants to find it, it's still easily, one, you can always contact me. I'll have info at the end. You can also Google like men's cuddle group Plymouth meeting and you'll get, a number of hits. I like to, talk some about my experience that when I first was going to that group, I had been in MKP on and off for probably about 9 years at that point. And I had done even some clothing optional, like intimacy and love, sexuality workshops for like all gender things. So I had done a lot of different stuff that really had grown me in those ways. And I was driving with Kevin. I was like, this is going to be outside my comfort zone. At the time, I identified as completely straight. And when we got into the room, like all of my a lot of my negative stereotypes and just conditioning, internalized homophobia was so coming up. I mean, I didn't even know the men's orientations, but like this, even though Kevin was MKP, they said they had clear ground rules. I read it beforehand. I was like, this is going to be an orgy. Men are going to come on to me and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be consensual. I was like so uncomfortable. It's interesting. I think I was probably more afraid in the beginning of that group than attending the NWTA.
Wow.
So that was some of my experience in the beginning, and some of it for me was also, while I was really a like queer LGBTQ plus ally, like strong for a long time, I still had a lot of fear, and even I had explored some of the time, like, maybe could I have some attraction to men or some attraction other than women. I was terrified to find that the answer might be yes or kind of or maybe. So that was also a huge fear of starting to connect and cuddle more, or share more extended touch with men. And for me, through that, it's a way of more emotionally too, and like deeper emotion, like generally bonding. That, for example, lying next to a man or sitting and holding a man while sharing touching and like looking at eyes and talking, for me is an even deeper, more intimate level of connecting in general than doing those same things without touch. So those are some of the fears that I've had, and at times definitely continue on and off. Would you be open, Boysen, to sharing like what terrifies you about anything you're talking about?
Thank you. I think that you kind of hinted at it, right? That what does it say? Like all of those fears about being hit on, fears about my own internalized homophobia, fears about consent, fears about what it says, right? That there is still in me, and I think in the culture, so many restrictions and taboos around you can only be a man if.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? You can only be a man if. And I have heard in spaces around MKP and outside of MKP, like when there is an invitation for platonic touch, for, men being close to one another, men holding hands, men holding one another, that there is such deeply embedded taboo in our culture against that in a way that when you look back through history, like, it has not always been true at all.
Yeah.
It is not true in other cultures around the world. It is not. I'll tell a story. For a period of time, Kendra and I, we were host to a young man from Burundi, and he was, quite a lot younger than us. And I remember being out. And walking along, and he just naturally reached out and he grabbed my hand and was holding my hand while we were walking on the sidewalk. And there was another, like, a young straight man from Africa. And for him, that was a natural expression of camaraderie, brotherhood, connection, and openness. That was trust. It was like trust to be able to do that. And I remember in my own body, the like, oh my God, what is this? Like, what is happening right now? Like, and then there's like a beat, and to be able to relax into, this is human. Like, this is what it means to be human. Like, so that's a little bit of what I experience. And then I'm going to ask this to you. I have opinions, but what do you think that means writ large in Western society, that men of kind of all leanings, backgrounds, sexual orientations, we carry all this stuff in us? What do you think that means to us as families and communities?
Yeah. I think I want to go there, and first I want to touch upon it. You said so beautifully that, some of me, the fears, some I've worked through, some more to go, and that many men I talk to and work with have is, you can't share more than X amount of touch, or something like, if it's emotional intimacy or affection, and if you want to be either straight, or if you want to be a strong man, or a quote masculine man, let's say, I think this stuff goes across many genders, many orientations. That will, I know, something for me is like, if I'm in a relationship or dating a woman, like, it took me a while to get to the point for me to ask, like, would you cuddle me? Like, would you spoon me? Would you hold me? Would you take care of me? Because there was that I brought on, that's not okay. I think there's a message of, like, I can't touch too much from a man if I want to identify as straight, even if it is platonic. Oh, and also I did want to share, because some people, platonic might be a new word. So for me, I think of platonic as meaning like non-sexual, non-romantic. Like, sometimes maybe platonic, that's like someone might feel some different feelings, but it'd be like a platonic therapeutic massage at a professional place where it's sexual. Sexual is not the goal. And I think, what it means, how it impacts so many of us, is that it contribute, and feel free to guide me, add your own thoughts, but it contributes to, like, the epidemic of loneliness, contributes to men and many genders feeling touch hungry or touch starved. And I can relate to that. This is why I got into these worlds first, as my own personal journey. It was like, when I wasn't dating someone or a relationship, I was starving for touch, because I didn't really know any other sustainable place to receive that in a more extended way. And MKP is beautiful for that. And I wanted more prolonged, like, touch or cuddling, more focus on affection than what I was commonly finding there. And I think what it means is, it's probably like more violence, less consensual interactions between men and women, and men, etc. Because there's so much hunger. It can really be driving us, and can look at someone that, like, someone's dating as, like, you're my only source, or in a relationship, you're my only source of touch, whether it's platonic or otherwise. So yeah, I think that's some of how it impacts us and contributes. Like I think often I hear talking about in the Mankind Project, contributes to like a culture of more competition and like rivalry among men and things, rather than brotherhood and coming together and like, oh, I've got you, we're in this together. Yeah, what are your thoughts, Boysen, and how do you think it?
I think it's so yes to everything that you said, and I think that fear and all of that sublimated stuff about we're human beings, all human beings, we're driven by touch. We evolved through touch, right? Like before language there was touch, and language has now come to kind of replace it. Like we've cut off our bodies and live from our heads and live from what we speak. But when I look out at the greater culture, I think men's fears and women's fears, it's all of us, right? I think men's fears of these taboo subjects, like the fact that we are dependent upon and need touch as human beings, is right next door to violence. Men's fear is so there that it's easy for us to mistake those fears for, to translate them into anger, to move from like all the stuff related to jealousy, all the stuff that men do in violent interactions with one another and with violent interactions in relationships, is like the inability to admit how much we need connection, how desperately we need connection to one another, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
and just to put it like, we keep saying platonic love, right? So what's that? Like, and the Greeks had multiple words for love: philios, agape, eros, all of these different versions of love that are embedded in some of our source materials and some of the religious texts that are out there, right? These definitions have meaning. And Plato's version of platonic love was about a love where it's not sexual, it's not passionate, but a love so deep that it transcends everything. It's divine. It's a divinity, connection to divinity. There's a risk in allowing ourselves to go there, to experience that kind of connection.
Yeah, so hear you, Boysen. It really feels like intimacy to me, like openness. And as you're talking, just imagine this, like me opening the gates, like opening the the gates in the castle to like get more into, be seen like in my heart or my soul, my deeper being. And with what you were sharing about the closeness, like desire for touch and connection and violence, is remind me of, I don't remember, maybe you know who said this, with a quote of basically like every action is either an expression of love or an attempt to get love.
An expression of love or an attempt to get love. No, I don't know who said that. So somebody in the podcast, somebody out there in the audience knows who talked about that. You'll have to send us a note. Let's talk about consent, and let's talk about, so you've like been doing this work in groups, both small and large. You've been doing this work with individuals. Consent is something that we talk about a lot in the culture right now. What have you learned over the past decade about what it means to live a life that is driven by consent in relationships?
Yeah, 100%. And you'll have to excuse me, that probably often those conversations or podcasts that like we move on and then I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to share this other thing.
Oh, okay.
So like, yeah, so it works for me. And just excuse me. I just want to make sure that as we were talking about all the touch and platonic, that my experience, just to really include, to make sure, to include that when I'm talking about these things, like men who identify as gay or bisexual or questioning or just anything else other than straight, because my experience is that many men who identify as those, maybe have romantic relationships or sexual connection, etc., with men, this idea of more platonic touch or nurturing touch or cuddling or sensual touch, like is often really very, very challenging, or it can be very rare and wanted more. So I just want to touch on that. Yeah, with with consent, I think some of the things that I've learned are that, yeah, I mean, that to be humble for the, like, I'm always learning. I'm always making mistakes and learning, and that's something really valuable, because I think that can be something that can be easily looked at as like black or white, or like, am I a good person or am I a bad person? And like, I think the reality is that, like, if we're striving, just like maybe these other things, there's gonna be a continuous learning and transformation in us, and making, quote, mistakes and learning. So that's one. Something that I like to add, which I don't hear talked about too often in the conversations of consent, is, let's say, since we're all about growing and making this ourselves uncomfortable stuff, like if I'm like offering touch to you, Boysen, or touching you, whatever, or any kind of connection, is I hear a lot of talking about me asking you, and like the verbal words, really important, totally agree, such an improvement. And then to me, it's probably equally as, I don't know, very, very valuable for me to also be really paying attention to you non-verbally. Because like, there's so many people, including myself, that have people pleasing backgrounds, or there's power dynamics.
Yes.
There's just all that stuff. For if I'm asking you, like, would you like a hug, or would you like to hold hands, to hear your words, and even if you're saying yes, for me to notice your voice really changed there, or wow, I saw your eyes just started to really dart, or even if something that I don't notice in you, like, wow, I just noticed like some contraction in me that I feel like maybe I'm relating to or empathizing. And it's like, I'm totally up for holding hands with you, boys, and giving a hug. This is something I noticed. I just want to double check. Does that really feel good for you? Because like, no thanks is totally great. So that non-verbal piece is, I feel a little bad, like tooting my own horn, or, but to me, it's like higher, or even like better, more evolved levels, like to incorporate that. Yes, keep the verbal, and then also really keep in mind, and people have had trauma, and people have had sexual abuse and PTSD, and all of these things that can make it very challenging to say a truthful yes or no. And also, so many, it's like you were talking about, being disconnected from our bodies.
Yes.
So many of us in our culture, for various reasons, are we're just not really so connected with what our bodies are saying. So maybe in someone who's like really in their head, like, I don't know if you, or just for example, if you're super in your head, you might be like, no, I am a yes. And like, you might just have not have, had the experience yet of like really getting in touch with your body. Your body still might be like, hell no, like I'm not for this, but we're just so used to pushing forward.
Yeah, super well said. Talking to you out there, like me, who, and I've said this before in the podcast, right? Trained to be a people pleaser, trained to put on a mask and actually hide what's actually going on with me. And some of the most powerful revelations that I've had in doing relationship work, connection work, has been learning how to actually sense my body's no and express it. Like, what a gift. To get beyond the macho games that we play with ourselves, right? In my head, pushing through game that you were just talking about, right? To be able to say, yeah, nope, something in me is saying no. And then that gives me an opportunity to explore what it is that says that. Yeah. So that's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And to me, it came up as you were sharing that, is, for me, my conditioning, my like older conditioning, is like you or me saying like no, or like not sure to each other about something connecting, is like, oh, that's decreasing connection, or it's loss, or stuff like that. And for me, as you're speaking, I was reminded, oh, for me, that's actually more intimate. Because for me, saying like no thank you to you, and staying in connection with you, and like sharing, or be like, is there another way we can connect? It's like, for me, even just in this moment, that feels so much more intimate. And oh my gosh, we're like, because either of us could have feelings about that, and we're so like paying attention and creating it together in a unique way, versus yeah, I'll fall into whatever the expectation is.
Right. Yeah. We've
And
covered a lot. Keep going.
well, yeah, what I wanted to say, like something that's, because it's helpful for people, something that's helped me and others, with me on my personal journey of learning my body's yes or no or maybe or things. And I got this from, I learned this from attending a number of, they're called cuddle parties, or saying I'll call them cuddle party workshops. It's a international nonprofit organization that does these consent and communication and platonic touch events all around the world. Is in their workshop, they'll do an exercise where, let's say, do it in groups. But let's say you and I are partnered up, and I'm going to ask you for different kinds of like platonic. It can be some like silly stuff or whatever, and we're not actually going to do it. Whatever your feelings are, and first round or one of the rounds is like you're going to say yes to like everything that I ask. So like, oh, would you like a hug, Boysen? Would you like me to give you a wet willy, like on those like all things, or would you like me to braid your hair, or tickle your feet and stuff. Seeing, if it's such a beautiful way to notice how your body is responding to these different questions, and how it responds when either like my body and I'm like truly yes and I'm verbally saying yes, or when my body is like a no and I'm like it's like, oh gosh, like okay, that's how that feels when I'm people pleasing. And then similarly do the exercise in reverse. Oh, how does it feel when I'm asking these questions and you're saying no every time, no matter what your actual answer is or feeling is? And how does it feel when like my no is aligned? And how does it feel when my no is like, no, but I would love to. Like that's so nice. So yeah, and that's something that I've done in my workshops too. And people, yeah, I think even people at home, like if they want to work on this stuff, they can even just do it with a friend or a partner. Yeah, so I wanted to share that idea.
That brings two more things up for me. So, wow, because as soon as you said that, especially when you said wet willy, I was like, absolutely fucking no to that, right? Like there was just like a big no. And men, I'm gonna point at you. I'm also gonna, no, it's not. It's not. It's both. It's all of us. This also brings to the fore for me those places where I have an inability or so little practice in loving myself. Right. So I just thought of one, like, can I rub your tummy? And that is one of those places, like for forever, for as long as I can remember, right? There's this part of me that's like, I have carried shame and self-hatred around this particular thing that is me. Right. So that the reaction within me is like, no, you can't do that. You can't see that. You can't have that, because that's a part of me that I have not learned to love fully. And so it seems as if this work, part of it is really diving into where are the parts of you that you have not yet learned to love. And can you challenge and welcome yourself to love those parts? Does that ring true with what you've witnessed?
Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah. And I think, like you said, the stomach or is a common part of bodies for various genders that, because of our cultural conditioning of like, this is sexy or attractive or beautiful and this isn't, and all that. And I think, also there's often this correlation of like, not always, but correlation sometimes of how tender and loving and like compassionate and nurturing I can be with myself, and then how much can I let that in from other people or ask for it, and how much do I believe I'm worthy of that, or I deserve that versus not, is like a determinant of how comfortable I am, and can I receive that from others. And it can be very different from like how comfortable I am to give to, like many people I know and work with. it's like, I'm all about giving. It's like giving feels so easy, but like, oh God, like me being taken care of, me not like doing something for you, either like drawing or right after, it's like, oh my God, no, that's terrifying. I'll be unlovable. I'll get kicked out of the tribe. Or, yeah.
Even the admission that I need it or want it, right?
Mm,
Is like is evidence. It's evidence that I'm not worthy. Evidence that well, you need that. No, you shouldn't
yeah.
need that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that ties back to what you were sharing earlier about one of the definitions or the being a man. It's like, yeah, we can't need things. We can't be tender. We can't want time to fall apart or be taken care of or be quote like what our culture might call for a moment. And I wanted to share with the body things that's some of why over time I've expanded to my professional work to either somebody's clothing optional, like one-on-one work or workshops and the one-on-one things like in person or remotely, because it's such a big opportunity. It's such a big opportunity for more self-love, for more positive body image, and really for I'll speak some about like my actual men's workshops is getting more intimate, like and intimacy I'm like using in a very general sense where it's just like closeness, and it's like more vulnerability. I mean, many men could probably relate to this in the mankind, but some of the mankind project work, like decreasing the divisions as far as clothing or like economic status communicated by clothing and things like that. And it's so it's so incredible to see whether it's a clothed or clothing optional place for people to start. Sometimes I'll say in a group or with me, start like understanding, like so terrified and am I gonna be judged or to like for me and probably just saying MKP getting to the end of like, oh wow, we're so similar, like, and we can have so much connection and so much support and safety. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, like what's coming up for you and how, like, where do you see yourself going and what do you have on the table right now for folks?
Well, one, I just love this work, and I like why I largely why I got into it is to help our culture change. So like one is to say people like even if I'm not a fit for you, like I'm very connected to these worlds. You're welcome to reach out, and I can help share other resources that might be a better fit. Or I really look forward to getting back to doing more all gender workshops in 2025, probably starting more in the platonic realm, and I would like to over time like expand more into the some clothing optional work and sensual and erotic, and that's like talking about being scared. I'm like I can totally do that, and like haven't done that in a group setting, and like that'll be some of my beautiful growth edge. So
Where should folks go to find you?
sure, my main website is great. It's cuddlingandcoaching.com. If you Google Kyle cuddling and coaching, I come up.
Kyle Robert Hoffman. Kyle Hoffman, my friend. So you're at the front of the room. And here's what I'm going to say to all the listeners out there. If you want to be in a space with a man who carries his humility and his knowledge and his absolute commitment to integrity in the way that he interacts, I have never witnessed Kyle out of integrity in the way that he shows up in a container. So that's so much. I trust you so much with that. Look him up, find him. Kyle, thank you for doing the work that you're doing out in the world. And may that it be that the culture continues to shift.
100%. Boys, would this be a good time for me to maybe like say a shout out to like basically like the past me? As far as MKP, would that
Shout out to the past you. Yeah, go for it.
I mean like so basically I just want to say like thank you for your words, and I'm kind of speaking to myself back before I went in MKP, to just men out there considering it, that I mean I offer you to try it. To try it for me, it did take courage, and it was new, and my experience is that it opened me up to a whole new world of how to be as a man, how to connect with other men, how to have a really clear life's mission. And I got surrounded by men who are into self-growth and evolving as people, and living their own missions. And also, it connected me to so many other resources like self-growth
Yes.
and like cutting-edge cultural resources. So I really invite you to reach out to whatever the appropriate ways are, whether it's maybe still Boysen's, I think still the open group is still running in West Springfield, Western Mass, or another group near you that I cannot state how much MKP has positively changed me and my life. And I wish it for more men and more communities.
Thank you. Kyle, I'll be seeing you, man.
Sounds good, bro. All right. I love it, man. I'll talk to you guys later.
Too.
Bye-bye.
Hey, it's Boysen. On the Mankind podcast, we've brought some incredible guests on to talk about the importance of doing the work to improve our mental and emotional health. And here's the truth. Multiple times over the last 25 years, I've had the help of one-on-one work with some amazing therapists. For me, for my wife, for both of us as adoptive parents, and for our kids. The Mankind Project and Men's Group, though awesome, are not a substitute for professional mental health support. And so I'm thrilled that the Mankind Podcast now has BetterHelp as a sponsor for the show. BetterHelp works online. It asks you what you're working on and then matches you for live one-on-one sessions with a licensed therapist, someone trained to work with you, listen, and offer helpful insights. I'm using BetterHelp. It's super easy, and I like what I'm getting. If getting one-on-one support in the comfort of your own space feels like a good direction for you, I invite you to check it out. Go to the link in the show notes or betterhelp.com/mankind. And if you sign up, you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy.